Coming up, are the Seattle Mariners cooked and other divisional series predictions? And it's the finale of the top 10 Dbacks from 2022, our little power ranking we've been doing the last couple of days. We got number one and number two to unveil today, so let's get it.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. Follow us on YouTube, Locked On Diamondbacks on there as well. We're trying to get our subscriber count up, so go please hit that follow button on our YouTube channel. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. We're going to be unveiling number one and number two in our top 10 D-backs from 2022 power ranking. But before we get there, I first want to talk about the Divisional Series and give some predictions maybe for the weekend, some things I think can happen. And I first want to start here with the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners, because this Astros team is just a freaking juggernaut. They took down the Mariners 4-2 today, and it's just Yordan Alvarez carrying this Astros offense right now. And we shouldn't be surprised, because if you go back and look at the numbers at the All-Star break, despite Judge having this fantastic season, there were numbers to support that maybe Yordan Alvarez was the MVP. And then you look at the second half, Alvarez didn't really come back to the pack, but he was kind of in and out the lineup a little bit, still put up fantastic numbers. Meanwhile, Judge just went to a different astronomical level. So we didn't feel like Yordan Alvarez was the MVP, in the second half. But we can't forget, at one point, halfway through the season, we could have made the argument for Yordan Alvarez to be the MVP, and he's showing why in this series. Then for the Seattle Mariners, you had Luis Castillo going today. He was pitching a gem, and it does not matter, because right now you just can't pitch to Yordan Alvarez. It's just too nasty, too dangerous, and Luis Castillo tried to get one by him. And it wasn't even by him. It wasn't even a striking Yordan Alvarez. It doesn't matter where the ball is. If it's within 4 feet of him, if his bat can reach the ball at this point, you got to be scared. And thank God they don't have the intentional walks anymore. We still got to throw the pitches to the catcher, because Yordan Alvarez might crank one of those right now with how hot he is. So I could still see the Mariners winning a game in this series, but if Robbie Ray has to go in the next game, I don't know how they're going to do it, because he did give up that home run to Yordan Alvarez in that other playoff game. So I don't know if he's going to be starting the next game, because he did come in pretty recently. But Robbie Ray's pitching the next game. I'm sorry, Seattle. It was a great season. You made the postseason. You ended the drought. But if Robbie Ray is on the bump for a do-or-die game, you're dead. You're in the coffin. You're 6 feet underground. And you're already buried. This Yankees versus Guardians series. First off, I first want to say every team in professional sports should be playing with a retractable roof. We should not have sporting events postponed and canceled, especially playoff events canceled because of weather. And most importantly, we shouldn't have playoff events affected by weather when we're actually playing the game. Do I want to see a Super Bowl played in the snow, played in the rain? I do not. Do I want to see a Boston Red Sox October baseball game where the starting pitcher is shivering on the mound? I don't want to see that. Have retractable roofs, so this way, when it's really cold, the weather, the elements are outside, you could close it, make it nice and control temperature. You could do what the Dbacks do. They got panels. They open those things up, and it's still controlled weather inside. Feels about 70 degrees, but we still get natural sunlight into the place because we got those panels. So that's the greatest thing that the D-backs have going for them at their stadium. They got their retractable roof with the panels that could open and close. Phenomenal stuff by the D-backs there. Every stadium should have that. Baseball is a great sport to be played outside, but it's not a fun sport to be played outside when it's raining or when it's freezing cold and you got to be out there for 5 hours, especially when those games go into extra innings. Nah, you can forget me with that. So I don't understand why every professional team doesn't have a retractable roof, but that's I guess a story for another day or a whole taken segment for another day, even though I just spent about a minute on it. But Yankees Guardians series. I like the Guardians of the next two games because you got Bieber and Tristan McKenzie going. Yankees, of course, up 1-0 in this series. But I could see a world where the Guardians are up 2-1 after 3 because of Shane Bieber and Tristan McKenzie. Now, one thing that does give me pause for concern is in 3 career starts against the New York Yankees, Shane Bieber has a 5.74 ERA. He's given up 10 earned runs and 15.2 innings pitched. It's his second worst ERA among teams he has at least 10 innings pitched against. So not the best numbers for Shane Bieber against the Yankees, but I just love the guy so much. I still think he's one of the most underrated pitchers in baseball. This guy was probably the best pitcher in the American League in 2020, of course, shortened season, but he basically won the Triple Crown that year. He took a little bit of a step back in 2021. I think he dealt with some injuries as well, but back to being an ace this year, and I think he's an underrated number 1 starter, and I think he could show up against the New York Yankees team, righty versus Judge and Stantons of the world, so I like that cross matchup as well. Tristan McKenzie, though, 2.45 ERA in 2 starts against the Yankees, only 3 earned runs and 11 innings pitched, so if I had to make the case for the Guardians to win the series, you have to win these next 2 games with Bieber, Tristan McKenzie on the mound. But I'm going to lean Yankees to win the series because I don't think you could have the type of season the Yankees just had, the type of season Judge just had, and lose in the Divisional Series to Cleveland. That can't happen if you're the New York Yankees. It's championship or bust, baby. So I'm picking the Yankees to win the series because they frankly have to. How about that Phillies versus Braves series? I like the Phillies in game 3 because they're going to have Aaron Nola, and I do think this series can go the distance. I think this series is going to go 5. I like Aaron Nola a lot in game 3. He has a 3.67 ERA in 5 starts against the Braves this season, which is pretty solid. I still think the Braves are going to win this series, but I do think it's going to go 5. It's going to go deep because you got to look at this Phillies team and you got to respect their offense. They got guys that could bop. And right now, one guy who isn't bopping is Kyle Schwarber, who's just a huge X factor in this series because right now he is hitless in this series. And if Kyle Schwarber can get going, the man who led the National League in home runs, if he can get going, he's the type of dude that could change the whole momentum of a game with just one swing of his bat. So he's going to be the X factor for me. And I like Aaron Nola in game 3. But the reason why I still love the Braves is because this was basically the best team in baseball the last 2/3 of the season. Ronald Acuna is a great playoff player. Austin Riley is an MVP candidate. I just think they're going to have those studs in their lineup step up. Of course, Philly's got studs too, like the Schwarbers I just mentioned, the Bryce Harpers of the world. But I think the Braves guys are better suited for the postseason. I like their talent a little bit more. I think they're a little bit more dynamic. Bryce Harper might be the best player in this series, but after that, I might take a couple of Braves after him if I was doing a random fantasy draft where I had to pick players from both teams. So I like the Phillies to at least compete in the series and make it 5, but I'm going to take the Braves to win. Now, the Braves only 11-8 against the Phillies this season, so it's not like exactly dominant against the Phillies this year. So that's why I believe this will be a close and competitive series. And then going to the last series, Dodgers versus Padres. I wanna lean the Padres in this series because, look, no one wants to see the Dodgers win. I don't want to see the Padres win either. Let me be clear. I want both teams to feel as much misery as possible, but the Dodgers are 14-5 against the Padres this season. I just think we're going to see big brother versus little brother once again. I'm even seeing this in my own work office because I got a Padres fan and a Dodgers fan in my office. And guess what? The Padres fan was popping champagne bottles after last night's victory, while the Dodgers fan is just like, we'll celebrate at the end of the season when we hold up a championship trophy. I just think that's the mentality of both of these teams. Even Manny Machado was going back at Big Papi after last night's win. Like, the Padres think like every time you win a game, like the playoffs is over. Meanwhile, the Dodgers know there's more at stake than just one game. Every game you got to build upon of it, and you got to win as many as possible. So I like the Dodgers mentality, I think, a little bit more than the Padres, but I do think an X factor in the series is surprisingly Blake Snell, because I'm not a big Blake Snell guy. I wouldn't trust him, but in 9 career starts against the Dodgers, he has a 2.5 ERA. So if the Padres can win that Blake Snell start potentially in game 4, then all cards are off the table. I'm not making any predictions because I would not bet against Joe Musgrove. That dude just has a big heart. He's a big game pitcher, so I wouldn't root against or go against him, bet against him. So if the Padres are able to go up 2-1 after a Blake Snell victory with Joe Musgrove potentially being the closeout guy, I would not bet on that game because I could see either team winning that and all cards are off. But to give my final prediction, I think the Dodgers are going to win this, and I'm not sure if the Padres are going to win another game in this series. Now, if you want to place a bet on who's going to come out the divisional series, you need to head to betonline.net, because betonline.net is your number one source for excuse me, let me start over. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. Let me put my name lower third back on the podcast because it's time, y'all. It's time to unveil the top 2 players in our Arizona top 10 players from the 2022 season power rankings. To recap, honorable mentions: Ketel Marte, Ryan Nelson, and Kevin Ginkel. Number 10, Corbin Carroll. Number 9, Dre Jameson. Number 8, Kyle Nelson. Number 7, Josh Rojas. Number 6, Joe Mantiply. Number 5, Dalton Varsho. 4, Jake McCarthy. Number 3, Christian Walker. And now the top 2. And after hearing the top 10, I'm pretty sure you can guess who's the top 2. And if you watch the Dbacks at all this season, you know what order the top 2's in as well. But it now gives me at least a little bit of excuse to just talk these guys up and just really I don't know, over exaggerate maybe a little bit, get a little bit hyperbolic with how much I love these 2 players. Because at number 2, we have Merrell Kelly, the workhorse that is Merrell Kelly. Because if you remember that 2020 season, Merrell Kelly was looking great in 2020, and he had the 2.59 ERA in 5 starts. And the thing with Merrell Kelly is, I didn't know Merrell Kelly was going to be the type of pitcher we saw this past season, because let's take it back to the start of Major League, start of Merrell Kelly's career. This guy came over from Korea, I believe, at the age of 30, was coming overseas that first year with the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2019, led the National League in losses with 14. Now, he still showed he was a workhorse back then with 183 innings pitched, but I think we felt like he was an innings eater in 2019. He gave you 183 innings, but just a 1.315 whip back in 2019, a 4.42 ERA. Like, it was solid numbers, but you're like, this is probably like a number 4, number 5 starter, innings eater for you in the back end of your rotation. Nothing to really write home about. Then he comes in 2020, has that 2.59 ERA in 5 starts, looks fantastic, looks like an ace, but then he gets hurt. He has the same injury I think that Markelle Fultz has, and he misses the rest of the year, and you're like, whoa, there goes a guy that potentially could have been in the Cy Young running, and then he comes back in 2021, and Merrell Kelly is just not himself last year. He was not good in 2021. A 4.44 ERA, only 158 innings pitched in 27 starts, was not the Merrell Kelly we saw in 2020, so it left a lot of question, entering this season. Which Merrell Kelly were we going to get? Are we going to get the guy who we saw in a large sample size in 2019 and 2021? Or is it going to be the potential guy that looked like he had Cy Young caliber stuff in 2020, despite it only being 5 starts? We had such a large sample size from 2019 and 2021 to show us that maybe Merrell Kelly just a back-end starter and not the frontline starter we saw in 2020. But now that we have Brent Strom on the team, he's been working with Merrell Kelly, and he turned him into one of the best pitchers in the National League, and a legit, I think, guy that could be in the top 8-12 in Cy Young voting, 33 starts this past season, 200 innings pitched, a 3.37 ERA, a 1.138 whip, 8.0 strikeouts per nine, 2.7 walks per nine. A really strong season by Merrell Kelly, and he's the definition of a workhorse. He only had 3 starts that didn't go at least 5 innings pitched this past year. Averaged 6.1 innings pitched per game, which is just absolutely insane. And like I said before, I like players who get better in the second half. Well, how about a player that is basically the same in the first half and second half? Because Merrell Kelly in the first half this past year, 3.26 ERA. The second half, 3.5 ERA. But his whip improved in the second half, and he threw more strikeouts in the second half. So he was basically the same guy in the first half and second half. Merrell Kelly does a great job of shutting down the top half of lineups. If you look at batting order positions, the basically guys batting between 1 through 6, Merrell Kelly only allows like a 675 OPS to those guys with like a 220 average. Merrell Kelly is really good against the top of your order. The biggest issue Merrell Kelly has going for him, if you watch this past season, is he just starts slow in these games. Like Merrell Kelly has an issue where he's just not good the first 2 innings. Like if you look at it, in the first inning this past year, he gave up a 280 average and an 823 OPS in the first inning. The second inning, a 280 average and an 838 OPS. 5.18 ERA in the first inning, 4.64 ERA in the second inning. So just absolutely terrible in those 2 innings. But innings 4 through 6, 2.72 ERA. Like he actually got better if he saw you a second or third time through the lineup, which is actually kind of crazy when you think about it, because most pitchers get worse the more times they see you through the order. And the numbers actually back that up, because that first play appearance you have against Merrell Kelly, you're batting 263 with a 744 OPS. But that second time you see Merrell Kelly, 208 average, 625 OPS. And how about that third time you faced Merrell Kelly? 198 average, 582 OPS allowed. Literally every time you go up to a bat against Merrell Kelly, the chances of you succeeding lessens with every plate appearance, which is just crazy to think about. He had 18 quality starts on the season, which is very impressive, a very high number. Merrell Kelly did everything you could want from him this past season. His K rate and his double play percentage improved greatly this past season. His contact percentage improved a lot as well. His fastball and his cutter were deadly this past year. They were probably his best 2-pitch combination. Merrell Kelly seriously turned himself into one of the best pitchers in baseball. And now he's got me thinking, like, if he pitches like this again next year, like he's a legit number 2, number 3 starter, maybe a number 2 starter. And like him and Zach Allen, those two, if they can just repeat what they did this season, which might not be the easiest thing, but if we could get 90% of 2022 Zach Allen and Merrell Kelly in 2023, like those two are good enough to be frontline rotation starters for a playoff rotation in the future, or maybe even next season if the Dbacks can get into that wild card race, which I believe they can. Another reason why I love Merrell Kelly, ASU grad, forks up, baby. Merrell Kelly, someone who is now going to be 34 years old tomorrow. At the time of you guys listening this, it's his birthday, because I'm recording this on October 13th. His birthday is October 14th. So happy birthday, Merrell Kelly, at the time of you listening to this. I hope they give him a nice little bump in pay, just because he deserves more money. He's been great for the D-backs this season. Him, Christian Walker, they all deserve a little bump in pay. So Merrell Kelly, great season by you, and I think you're going to get some Cy Young votes. I don't know where Merrell Kelly's going to finish, but I think he's going to finish at least in the top 10 of Cy Young voting in the National League in 2022. But this next guy, who's coming in at number 1 for the top 10 D-backs from 2022, I believe this guy should finish number 2 in Cy Young voting, and maybe that's a hot take, maybe it isn't, but Zach Gallen had himself a fantastic season. Zach Gallen had a 2.54 ERA. Despite it feeling like Zach Gallen missed some time this year, like some serious time, he still had 31 starts, still had 184 innings pitched, led the league in whip, .913 whip, led the league in hits per 9, 5.9 hits per 9, 9.4 strikeouts per 9, 2.3 walks per 9. Zach Gallen just had himself a fantastic season. And really, if you just look at Zach Gallen's like year by year stats, like they're actually like insanely impressive. And it's literally like the kind of stats you look at for any future Hall of Famer, right? Like he's on the track record, on the course. If he keeps doing what he's doing statistically over the, however many years, 8 to 10 years, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like, listen to the stats the first 4 years for Zach Allen. 2019, only 80 innings pitched between the Marlins and the Dbacks, but a 2.81 ERA. And if you remember, he had 25 consecutive starts of allowing 2 earned runs or fewer. Like, Zach Allen was crazy to start his year. If you remember, in 2020, Zach Allen, 12 starts, 72 innings pitched, 2.75 ERA, finished ninth in Cy Young voting in 2020. Now, 2021, I believe, is going to be the outlier year in Zach Allen's career because last year dealt with injuries, didn't have Brent Strom with him. Just a weird season all around for Zach Allen last year. Same with Merrell Kelly. 4.3 ERA for Gallen in 121 innings pitched last year. But now you saw what he did this season, and Zach Allen looked back to being that guy. And I really think if he's with Brent Strom over the next 5 years, go to betonline.net and place a bet on Zach Allen winning MVP one of the next 5 seasons, because if Brent Strom is still the pitching coach for the next 5 years, Zach Allen will win a Cy Young, because it took Sandy Alcantara to basically have a all-time historic first half of the season to win the Cy Young award this year. Because if Sandy Alcantara is 15% worse than what he was this season, Zach Allen would probably win the Cy Young. And I do think he's going to finish second in Cy Young voting because he was that good this year. Zach Allen is a right-handed pitcher, and against lefties, he allowed a 146 average and a 473 OPS. Zach Allen was actually better against lefties than against righties. He was both elite at home and away. Some D-backs players only good at home. Some D-backs players only good on the road. We see that for a lot of players in Major League Baseball. That was the thing with Blake Snell last year. I don't remember which one it was, but it was when Blake Snell pitches at home, he has a 2.5 ERA. On the road, it's a 8.7 ERA. But for Zach Allen, excuse me. But for Zach Allen, 2.49 ERA at home, 2.59 ERA on the road. And he had 90 innings pitched at home, 93 innings pitched on the road. So literally the same guy, home or road. It does not matter what environment Zach Allen is in. He's going to dominate who's ever at the plate, and that's what he did all season long. Batters, think about this. Hold on. Let me make sure I got the stat right, because batters, when they were ahead of the count, think about this. How many times have we seen, when you go on Baseball Reference, look at any split for a pitcher and look at the numbers when the batter is ahead in the count. A lot of times when the batter is ahead against the pitcher, which you would expect, the batter bats 260, maybe with an 810 OPS. Usually the numbers are very pro batter when they're ahead in the count, which they should be because they're going to be in more favorable counts. But Zach Allen, when the batter is ahead against Zach Allen, they're only batting 184. Think about that. Even when you have a favorable count, even when you know a fastball might be coming, it does not matter because Zach Allen is cunning and he's still able to throw it past you. He was absolutely shut down with men on the bases and high leverage moments this past year. A 170 average, 613 OPS allowed with runners in scoring position, 197 average and 607 OPS allowed with men on the bases. And in high leverage moments, 188 average and 630 OPS allowed in those moments as well. Zach Allen had himself 19 quality starts this past year, which I think makes Merrell Kelly's 18 quality starts even more impressive, considering he only had one more start on the season than Zach Gallen. Gallen's walk rate, double play percentage, and home run percentage all improved a lot this past season. Zach Gallen also had his hard contact stats improve as well, which you always like to see because I don't like to see my pitchers giving up loud, hard contact. That's the thing with Madison Bumgarner. Even if the box score says Madison Bumgarner might have went 5 innings pitch and 3 earned runs, if you watch the game, you're like, damn, those fly balls are jumping off the bats. And if we did have Dalton Varsho, Alec Thomas out there tracking those alley balls, this guy would have an 8.7 ERA. So for Zach Allen, that is not the case. The hard contact numbers could improve, I think, even more because he still gave up an 87 mile an hour exit velocity, 36% hard hit percentage. I would like to see those numbers improve a little bit more, but Zach Allen was still nasty. 237 BABIP allowed. That's batting average on balls in play. If you put the ball in play, it was most likely not going anywhere. And like I said, if you were hitting it to the outfield, Varsho is the best defensive outfielder in baseball. If you hit it down the right sideline, Christian Walker was the best defensive first baseman in baseball. Basically, if he hits the right side of the field, bad things were going to happen for the offensive player because you either had Christian Walker or maybe one of our elite defensive outfielders out there. So feel pretty sad for the opposing offenses when they go against our defense next season and the future, because wait till we get Yordan Lawler up. Wait till we get a Drew Jones up. Like I'm going to start going crazy with the ideas of Yordan Lawler and Drew Jones coming up, because this D-backs team is so loaded with young talent. I just don't even know how they're going to configure the roster. Like trades will be coming down the pipe in the future. Zach Allen, when I was talking about his BABIP before, was also the best BABIP he allowed in his career. Career low BABIP allowed batting average on balls in play. So impressive for that. Also, 90th percentile in fastball spin rate for Zach Allen. That fastball curveball combo he had this past season was unhittable, and he added about a tick of velocity on his fastball as well, and that is the Brent Strom effect. So Zach Allen, you were by far the best D-backs player this past season. You had that scoreless inning streak as well. That hit 44 and a third innings pitched. D-backs franchise record, ended up being top 7, I believe, with that scoreless streak all time. So Zach Allen, even though Sandy Alcantara, I think, deserves to win the Cy Young, I would vote for Sandy Alcantara. Zach Allen himself had a pretty historic season, had a fantastic season. And I think in most years, Zach Allen wins the Cy Young, but Sandy had himself a fantastic year as well. So I would even vote for Sandy. But next year, the year after that, and the next 3 years after that, within the next 5 years, mark it down, Zach Allen will win a Cy Young award. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Go back this past week and listen to the rest of our top 10 power rankings from this past season for the top 10 D-backs in 2022. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners. Now go make your second listen of the day, Locked On MLB, with my pal Sully Baseball, who you hear every Monday when we do our crossovers, Walking Baseball Encyclopedia and Historian, because he's an old man. So go check out his podcast. Come back next week for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.